Number 6. As there must necessarily be more sorrow, and will be greater terrors from the Lord, so there is also required greater and stronger acts of faith, whereby pardon may be applied. For the agony and temptation being greater, the strength of faith also must be proportionably increased. Hence we see the incestuous person was almost overwhelmed. So great a matter was it to exercise faith, when God was apprehended thus angry. And certainly if faith be a grace so difficultly put forth even for the least sin, what conflicts must there needs be, when nothing but mountains are in the way, and great gulfs apprehended between pardon and him? The mariner doth need more skill and strength in a tempest than in a calm, and the soldier must show more courage in the midst of a furious battle than when all things are quiet. Thus you see wherein a great difference is to be made. Now there are some particulars wherein a believer repenting is to make no difference at all, and that is in these things. First, there is no difference in respect of the efficient cause, God's grace in pardoning. The godly man is not to think that God can more easily pardon less sins than great sins. No, all these are equally pardoned by him. Even as in the earth, though there be great and high mountains in respect of other hills, yet both them and these are merely as punctum in respect of heaven. So, although some sins exceed others in guilt to diverse ways, yet all of them, in respect of God's grace, are but as a drop before the sun, which is quickly dried up. Hence, when God proclaimeth himself in all his goodness, he is described to be a God pardoning iniquity, transgression, and sin. And thus in Isaiah 1, he can make sins as red as scarlet, as white as snow, so that compared to God's grace there is no difference at all. Nor, secondly, may any difference be made in respect of a meritorious cause, which is Christ's obedience and sufferings. For that cleanseth away great sins as well as small. And certainly when we consider what infinite value and worth the suffering of him who is God as well as man do amount to, the believing soul need not wonder if Christ do away one as well as the other. In the Red Sea, the stoutest and most valiant champion was drowned as well as the meanest soldier. He is the Lamb that takes away the sins of the world, and his blood is said to cleanse us from all our iniquities. Here is no difference made from one sin as well as another, so that although thy great sins require greater humiliation, yet not a greater mediator than Christ is. Thou must pour out more tears, but Christ needs not pour out more blood, so that in respect of Christ's righteousness applied, the least and the greatest sinner are pardoned both alike. Neither is it blasphemy, though the Papists judge it so, to say Mary Magdalene and the Virgin Mary are both justified alike. Number 3. Neither may we make any difference in the means of pardon thus far, as if our merit and satisfaction were to go to the pardon of one and not of the other. We are to show greater sorrow, more means are to be used, yet we are not to judge these actions of ours as having any worth or dignity in them for reconciliation, so that after we have done all, we must confess it is grace only that pardons. And this is the more to be observed, because it is hard not to do anything extraordinarily in a way of pardon, and not presently to rest upon this, as if it had some worth in it. But certainly, if so be it be the goodness of God merely to forgive us our farthings, it is much more his liberality to pardon our pounds. And if by our strength we cannot remove a straw, how shall we a beam? But in the primitive times the Church, being severe against gross offenders, appointed more solemn and extraordinary duties of humiliation for satisfaction to the Church of God in point of scandal, and in process of time these were taught to be satisfactory even to God himself. Fourthly, neither may this difference be made as if less sins might consist with the grace of justification, but such gross sins did wholly exclude out of that state. For there are some who plead for the distinction of mortal and venial sins. In this sense, venial are all those which may stand with the favor and grace of God to the person so failing. But mortal are such which, though a man hath been justified, yet being committed, will cast him out of his sonship. Such a distinction Musculus acknowledgeth, Losicome, de Peccato, and others. But this supposeth a total apostasy from grace, which I have already disproved. As the ark was made of that wood which would not be corrupt or putrefy, so is the Church of God in respect of the living members. Therefore, although God's people in such grievous falls lose their assurance, feel woeful commotions of heart, yet they are not to conclude that God hath utterly cast them off. They are not to look upon themselves as unsound, though they have been prodigals.